God, are you a flat earther?
Yep. Yeah. Hey, what's up, good people? I was just logging off from working on one of my new videos. Just gonna air at a later date. And I said, let me see what the findings of this word is. And here we are, clicked on it. And yeah, right. The flat earth model is an old-fashioned concept of the earth's shape as a plane or disk. We believe it's a plane, but then they go on and be idiotic and say disk. You know, like there's a disc or CD or DVD floating around in space. You see, they mix their funny thoughts with what they think they believe in, like space. You know, and that's where everything goes haywire. And you see our crossed out flat earth society, we are no part of that. So when you hear something that the flat earth society said, you don't have to bring that to us. We treat them just like you guys. And down here on the bottom, why do flat earthers believe the earth is flat? Flat earthers believe that everything falls down. Yes, well, if it's not on a ledge or something stable, it's gonna fall down. You know, it ain't no damn gravity. Gravity should pull it off of a ledge, and things fall into the center of the earth. Where is the center? Is everyone on the center of the earth? No. And then they're gonna come out with the nucleus, or whatever the hell you call it, the core. That bright, beautiful thing that's supposed to be sucking all the energy down and keeping you grounded. But not no bugs or butterflies or ladybugs. Stay flat. It is a plane. And a plane flies in the air, so you call it an airplane. What if Earth was flat? Like the famous thing I say about it spinning. If it stopped spinning, would you know? If the Earth was flat, would you even know? It's like a catch-22, right? You know, you would probably do some experiments to see how far you can see, and like say, wow, it's probably flat. You can mark your locations. You can, you know, like if you're in a boat or whatever, you can go to a buoy. You can see a buoy and go out to the buoy and go, okay, this is how far I saw. Now I'm going to look further and see how far you can continue to keep seeing. And then you make your own determinations, you know? I don't know how else to tell you. According to the calculations that they give us of a ball, it can't be a ball because we keep seeing flat. You know, they said we're going to stop saying flat earth. We're going to call it flat water. I think that would slow down the traffic. Flat water. Can't deny that. Does the Bible really say that Earth is flat? Doesn't use the word flat, but again, we can go with the water. But it does give a description of what the Earth is and what it takes shape of. In Job chapter 38, verse 14. Yep, pretty much. Job 38:14. The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Does anyone know what that looks like? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Do not yell in my office. Raise your hand.
Copernicus was born in 1473 in Torun, Poland, to a wealthy family. He received all the advantages of a great education.
He first studied painting and math. He also studied medicine and then later law, to the point where he became the canon for a local church. And only later did he develop a keen interest for astronomy.
At age 35, Copernicus started questioning the prevailing thought about the universe.
The dominant model prior to Copernicus was Ptolemy's model of the solar system, which had the sun and planets moving around the Earth. It was very complex, very unwieldy, and it really didn't work.
Copernicus came up with a theory that was extremely elegant in its simplicity, where the sun was the center of the universe and the planets revolved around it.
In 1513, Copernicus built his own observatory to further his astronomical studies.
Copernicus advanced the idea that the time it takes a planet to orbit the sun depends on its distance from the sun. The farther it is, the longer it takes to go around the sun. A very revolutionary idea at the time.
In 1514, Copernicus published a list of 7 axioms about the universe. The sun is at the center of everything. The Earth goes around the sun. The moon goes around the Earth. And the stars are much farther away than the sun is from the Earth. Taken together, these 7 axioms really provide the basis of modern astronomy.
Copernicus's theories were rejected by scholars of his time, and they incensed the Catholic Church.
Copernicus's writings were banned from the church after his death and were not allowed to be read for about 3 centuries.
Copernicus spent his final years defending his work and died at the age of 70 on May 24, 1543.
One of the more remarkable things about Copernicus is that he did all of his work with very crude tools. In the observatory that he built, he didn't even have a telescope. He truly revolutionized astronomy. He changed the way we think about everything.
Right, give me a little music. Yeah, drop that beat. Here we go again. From these tools here, which some people still probably use somewhere, to the high definition cameras, binoculars. You could look further than a lot of these tools here, which they use back in Copernicus's days. So I believe now we can see a lot further, a lot better, and we can make more observations these days, and we can record them. That's another thing. We can actually record our findings. They couldn't do that back then, so it was amazing to people, but now we record the same thing that he was recording and speaking about, and we're assholes. Boy.
I want to read something from an article, Universe Today, Space and Astronomy News. Who discovered the Earth? When I was first asked this question, who discovered the Earth, I thought it was ridiculous. If you use your eyes and look down beneath your feet, you'll be able to discover the Earth. Ha ha ha. This was how the first humans would have done it, in hundreds and thousands of years ago. But maybe a better question is, who discovered the Earth is a planet? In ancient times, people thought that the Earth was the center of the universe and that the sun, moon, and planets and stars rotated around us. Although some thought the Earth to be flat. Who in the heck would do that? The ancient Greeks, like Plato, who were convinced that the Earth was a sphere. They thought that each of the worlds and stars were in crystal spheres surrounding us. This idea is natural and intuitive. Anyone who stands outside and looks up can clearly see that the stars, the planets, are turning around the Earth. But ancient astronomers who study the heavens. Now, this is where I say start someplace and then work your way backwards. They studied the heavens. Now they gotta go find out what heaven is. You know, you want to study something, you want to find out what you're studying. You look up heaven, and you'll get your answer of why the stars, the moon, and the sun is rotating in such a way. No, they don't do that. But ancient astronomers who studied the heavens found a few problems. Instead of following a straight path in the sky, some of the planets, would appear to stop, move backwards, stop again, and then move forwards. To explain this, the Greek astronomer Ptolemy said that the planets were in tiny spheres and made little circles as they orbited the Earth. Now, I want to show you something real quick.
The Book of Revolutions of the Lights of Heaven, each as it is, according to their classes, according to their period of rule and their times, according to their names and places of origin, and according to their months. That Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, and is their leader, showed to me. And he showed me all their regulations exactly as they are for each year of the world and forever, until the new creation shall be made, which will last forever. And this is the first law of the lights. The light called the sun, its rising is in the gates of heaven that are towards the east, and its setting is in the western gates of heaven. And I saw 6 gates from which the sun rises, and 6 gates in which the sun sets, and the moon also rises and sets in those gates. And the leaders of the stars together with those whom they lead, there are 6 in the east and 6 in the west, all exactly in place, one next to the other. And there are many windows to the south and the north of those gates. And first there rises the greater light, named the sun, and its disk is like the disk of heaven, and the whole of it is full of a fire which gives light and warmth. The wind blows the chariots on which it ascends, and the sun goes down in the sky and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is led so that it comes to the appropriate gate and shines in the sky. In this way it rises in the first month, in the large gate, namely, it rises through the fourth of those 6 gates that are towards the east. And in that 4th gate, through which the sun rises, in the first month, there are 12 window openings from which, whenever they are opened, flames come out. When the sun rises in heaven, it goes out through that 4th gate for 30 days, and exactly in the 4th gate, in the west of heaven, it goes down. And in those days the day grows daily longer, and the night grows nightly shorter, until the 13th morning. And on that day, the day becomes longer than the night by a double part, and the day amounts to exactly 10 parts, and the night amounts to 8 parts. And the sun rises from that 4th gate and sets in the 4th gate, and returns to the 5th gate in the east for 30 mornings, and it rises from it and sets in the 5th gate. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts, and the day amounts to 11 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 7 parts. And the sun returns to the east and comes to the 6th gate and rises and sets in the 6th gate for 31 mornings because of its sign. And on that day, the day becomes longer than the night, and the day becomes double the night, and the day amounts to 12 parts, and the night becomes shorter and amounts to 6 parts. And the sun rises up so that the day may grow shorter, and the night longer. And the sun returns to the east, and it comes to the 6th gate, and rises from it, and sets for 30 mornings. And when 30 mornings have been completed, the day becomes shorter, by exactly 1 part, and the day amounts to 11 parts, and the night to 7 parts. And the sun goes out from the west, through that 6th gate, and goes to the east, and rises in the 5th gate for 30 mornings, and it sets in the west again, in the 5th gate in the west. On that day, the day becomes shorter by 2 parts, and the day amounts to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. And the sun rises from that 5th gate and sets in the 5th gate in the west, and rises in the 4th gate for 31 mornings because of its sign, and sets in the west. On that day, the day becomes equal with the night, and is of equal length, and the night amounts to 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the sun rises from that gate and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the 3rd gate for 30 mornings, and sets in the west in the 3rd gate. And the sun rises from that 3rd gate, and sets in the 3rd gate in the west, and returns to the east, and the sun rises in the 2nd gate in the east for 30 mornings, and likewise it sets in the 2nd gate in the west of heaven. And on that day the night amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. And the sun rises on that day from the 2nd gate, and sets in the west in the 2nd gate, and returns to the east for the 1st gate for 31 mornings, then sets in the west in the 1st gate. And on that day the night becomes longer, and becomes double the day, and the night amounts to exactly 12 parts, and the day to 6 parts. And with this the sun has completed the division of its journey, and it turns back again along the divisions of its journey, and it comes through that 1st gate for 30 mornings, and sets in the west opposite it. And on that day the night becomes shorter in length by 1 part, and amounts to 11 parts, and the day to 7 parts. And the sun returns and comes to the 2nd gate in the east, and it returns along those divisions of its journey for 30 mornings, rising and setting. And on that day the night becomes shorter in length, and the night amounts to 10 parts, and the day to 8 parts. And on that day the sun rises from the 2nd gate, and sets in the west, and returns to the east, and rises in the 3rd gate for 31 mornings, and sets in the west of the sky. And on that day the night becomes shorter, and amounts to 9 parts, and the day amounts to 9 parts, and the night becomes equal with the day. And the year amounts to exactly 364 days. And the length of the day and the night, and the shortness of the day and the night, they are different because of the journey of the sun. Because of it, its journey becomes daily longer and nightly shorter. And this is the law and the journey of the sun and its return. As often as it returns, 60 times it returns and rises. That is the great eternal light, which forever and ever is named the sun. And this that rises is the great light, which is named after its appearance, as the Lord commanded. And thus it rises and sets. It neither decreases nor rests, but runs day and night in its chariot. And its light is 7 times brighter than that of the moon, but in size the two are equal. And after this law I saw another law, for the lesser light named the moon. And its disk is like the disk of the sun, and the wind blows its chariot on which it rides, and in fixed measure light is given to it. And every month its rising and setting change, and its days are as the days of the sun. And when its light is uniformly full, it is a 7th part the light of the sun. And thus it rises, and its first phase is towards the east. It rises on the 30th morning, and on that day it appears and becomes for you the first phase of the moon, on the 30th morning, together with the sun in the gate through which the sun rises. And a half with a 7th part, and its entire disk is empty, without light except for a 7th part, a 14th part of its light. And on the day that it receives a 7th and a half of its light amounts to a 7th, and a 7th part and a half. It sets with the sun, and when the sun rises, the moon rises with it, and receives a half of 1 part of light. And on that night, at the beginning of its morning, at the beginning of the moon's day, the moon sets with the sun, and is dark on that night in 6 and 7 parts and a half. And it rises on that day, with exactly a 7th part, goes out, recedes from the rising of the sun, and becomes bright on the remainder of its days, in the other 6 and 7 parts. And another journey and law I saw for it, in that according to this law it makes its monthly journey. And Uriel, the holy angel who is leader of them all, showed me everything, and I wrote down their positions as he showed them to me. And I wrote down their months, as they are, and the appearance of their light, until 15 days have been completed. In seventh parts it makes all its darkness full, and in seventh parts it makes all its light full, in the east and in the west. And in certain months it changes its setting, and in certain months it follows its own individual course. In 2 months it sets with the sun, in those 2 gates that are in the middle, in the third and in the fourth gate. It goes out for 7 days and turns back, and returns again to the gate from which the sun rises. And in that gate it makes all its light full, and it recedes from the sun, and comes in 8 days to the 6th gate from which the sun rises. And when the sun rises from the 4th gate, the moon goes out for 7 days, until it rises from the 5th gate. And again it returns in 7 days to the 4th gate, makes all its light full, recedes, and comes to the 1st gate in 8 days. And again it returns in 7 days to the 4th gate from which the sun rises. Thus I saw their positions, how the moon rose and how the sun set in those days. And if 5 years are added together, the sun has an excess of 30 days. For each year of the 5 years there are 364 days. And the excess of the sun and the stars come to 6 days. In 5 years, with 6 days each, they have an excess of 30 days, and the moon falls behind the sun and the stars by 30 days. And the moon conducts the years exactly, all of them to their eternal positions. They are neither early nor late, even by 1 day, but change the year in exactly 364 days. In 3 years there are 1,092 days, and in 5 years there is 1,820 days, so that in 8 years there are 2,912 days. For the moon alone, the days in 3 years comes to 1,062 days, and in 5 years it is 50 days behind. And there are 1,770 days in 5 years, so that for the moon the days in 8 years amount to 2,832 days. For the difference in 8 years is 80 days, and all the days that the moon is behind in 8 years are 80 days. And the year is completed exactly in accordance with their positions and the positions of the sun, in that they rise from the gates from which the sun rises and sets for 30 days. And the leaders of the tens of thousands, who are in charge of the whole of creation and in charge of all the stars, and also the 4 days which are added, and are not separated from their position according to the whole reckoning of the year. And these serve on the 4 days that are not counted in the reckoning of the year. And because of them men go wrong in them. For these lights really serve in the stations of the world, one in the 1st gate, and one in the 3rd gate, and one in the 4th gate, and one in the 6th gate. And the exact harmony of the world is completed in the separate 364 stations of the world. For the signs and the times and the years and the days were showed to me by the angel Uriel, whom the Lord of eternal glory has placed in charge of all the lights of heaven, in heaven and in the world, so that they might rule on the face of heaven and appear over the earth, and be leaders of day and night, the sun and the moon, the stars, and all the serving creatures who revolve in all the chariots of heaven. Likewise Uriel showed to me 12 gate openings in the disk of the chariot of the sun in the sky, from which the rays of the sun came out. And from them heat comes out over the earth when they are opened at the times that are appointed for them. And there are openings for the winds and for the spirit of the dew when they are opened at their times, opened in heaven at the ends of the earth. I saw 12 gates in heaven at the ends of the earth, from which the sun and the moon and the stars and all the works of heaven go out in the east and in the west. And there are many window openings to the north and to the south, and each window at its appointed time sends out heat corresponding to those gates, from which the stars go out in accordance with his command to them, and which they set according to their number. And I saw chariots in heaven running through the region above those gates, in which the stars that never set rotate. And one is bigger than all the others, and it goes round through the whole world. And at the ends of the earth I saw 12 gates open to all the winds, from which the winds come out and blow over the earth. 3 of them open in the front of heaven, and 3 in the back, and 3 on the right of heaven, and 3 on the left. And the 3 first are those towards the east, and then the 3 towards the north, and the 3 after those towards the south, and the 3 in the west. Through 4 of them come winds of blessing and peace, and from the other 8 come winds of punishment. When they are sent, they bring devastation to the whole earth, to the water which is on it, and to all those who dwell upon it, and to everything that is in the water and on dry ground. And the first wind from those gates, called the east wind, comes out through the first gate, which is towards the east. The one that comes from the south brings devastation, drought, heat, and destruction. And through the second gate in the middle comes what is right. And from it come rain and fruitfulness and prosperity and dew. And through the third gate, which is towards the north, comes cold and drought. And after these, the winds towards the south come out, through 3 gates. First, through the first of the gates, which inclines towards the east, comes a hot wind. And through the middle gate, which is next to it, come pleasant fragrances and dew and rain and prosperity and life. And through the third gate, which is towards the west, come dew and rain and locust and devastation. And after these, the winds towards the north. From the 7th gate, which is towards the east, come dew and rain, locusts and devastation. And through the gate exactly in the middle come rain and dew and life and prosperity. And through the third gate, which is towards the west, come mist and hoarfrost and snow and rain and dew and locusts. And after these, the winds towards the west. Through the first gate, which inclines towards the north, come dew and rain and hoarfrost and cold and snow and frost. And from the middle gate come dew and rain, prosperity and blessing. And through the last gate, which is towards the south, come drought and devastation, burning and destruction. And thus the 12 gates of the 4 quarters of heaven are complete. And all of their laws and all of their punishments and all their benefits I have shown to you, my son Methuselah. They called the first quarter eastern because it is the first, and they called the second the south because there the Most High descends, and there especially the one who is blessed forever descends. And the western quarter is called waning because there all the lights of heaven wane and go down. And the 4th quarter, named the north, is divided into 3 parts, and the first of them is the dwelling place for men, and the second contains seas of water, and the deeps, and the forest, and the rivers, and darkness and mist. And the third part contains the garden of righteousness. I saw 7 high mountains, which were higher than all other mountains on the earth, and from them snow comes, and days and times and years pass away and go by. I saw 7 rivers on the earth larger than all the other rivers. One of them comes from the east and pours out its waters into the great sea. And 2 of them come from the north to the sea and pour out their water into the Erythraean Sea in the east. And the remaining 4 flow out on the side of the north to their seas, 2 to the Erythraean Sea and 2 into the great sea, and they discharge themselves there and not into the wilderness as some say. I saw 7 large islands in the sea and on the land, 2 on the land and 5 in the great sea. The names of the sun are as follows: the first, Orieres; the second, Tomasis. The moon has 4 names. The first name is Asanya, and the second Ebla, and the third Benace, and the fourth Irae. These are the 2 great lights. Their disk is like the disk of heaven, and in size the 2 are equal. In the disk of the sun are 7 parts of light, which are added to it more than to the moon. And in fixed measure light is transferred to the moon until a 7th part of the sun is exhausted. And they set, go into the gates of the west, go round through the north, and rise through the gates of the east on the face of heaven. And when the moon rises, it appears in the sky, and has half of a 7th part of light, and on the 14th day it makes all its light full. And 15 parts of light are transferred to it, until on the 15th day its light is full, according to the sign of the year, and amounts to 15 parts. And the moon comes into being by halves of a 7th part. And in its waning on the first day it decreases to 14 parts of its light, and on the second to 13 parts, and on the third to 12 parts, on the fourth to 11 parts, and on the 5th to 10 parts, and on the 6th to 9 parts, and on the 7th to 8 parts, and on the 8th to 7 parts, and on the 9th to 6 parts, and on the 10th to 5 parts, and on the 11th to 4 parts, and on the 12th to the 3, and on the 13th to 2, and on the 14th to half of a seventh part. And all the light that remains from the total disappears on the 15th day. And in certain months the moon has 29 days, and once 28. And Uriel showed me another law, when light is transferred to the moon, and on which side it is transferred from the sun. All the time that the moon is increasing in its light, it transfers as it becomes opposite the sun, until in 14 days its light is full in the sky. And when it is all ablaze, its light is full in the sky. And on the first day it is called the new moon, for on that daylight rises on it. And its light becomes fully exactly on the day that as the sun goes down in the west, it rises from the east for the night. And the moon shines for the whole night until the sun rises opposite it, and the moon is seen opposite the sun. And on the side on which the light of the moon appears, there again it wanes until all its light disappears, and the days of the moon end, and its disk remains empty without light. And for 3 months, at its proper time, it achieves 30 days, and for 3 months it achieves 29 days, during which it completes its waning in the first period, in the first gate, 127 days. And in the time of its rising for 3 months, it appears in each month with 30 days, and for 3 months it appears in each month with 29 days. By night, for 20 days each time, it looks like a man, and by day like heaven, for there is nothing else in it except its light. And now, my son Methuselah, I have shown you everything, and the whole law of the stars of heaven is complete. And he showed me the whole law for these, for every day, and for every time, and for every rule, and for every year, and for the end thereof, according to its command for every month and every week. And the waning of the moon, which occurs in the 6th gate, for in that 6th gate its light becomes full, and after that it is the beginning of the month. And the waning, which occurs in the 1st gate, at its proper time, until 127 days are complete, or by weeks, 25 weeks and 2 days, and how it falls behind the sun, according to the law of the stars, by exactly 5 days in one period of time, when it has completed the pathway you have seen. Such is the appearance and likeness of every light which Uriel, the great angel who is their leader, showed me. And in those days Uriel answered me and said to me, Behold, I have shown you everything, O Enoch, and I have revealed everything to you, so that you may see the sun, and this moon, and those who lead the stars of heaven, and all those who turn them, their task, and their times, and their rising. But in the days of the sinners the years will become shorter, and their seed will be late on their land, and on their fields. And all things on the earth will change and will not appear at their proper time, and the rain will be withheld, and heaven will retain it. And in those times the fruits of the earth will be late, and will not grow at their proper time, and the fruits of the trees will be withheld at their proper time. And the moon will change its customary practice, and will not appear at its proper time. But in those days it will appear in heaven, come on top of a large chariot in the west, and shine with more than normal brightness. And many heads of the stars in command will go astray, and these will change their courses and their activities, and will not appear at the times that have been prescribed for them. And the entire law of the stars will be closed to the sinners, and the thoughts of those who dwell upon the earth will go astray over them, and they will turn from all their ways and will go astray, and will think them gods. And many evils will overtake them, and punishment will come upon them to destroy them all. And he said to me, O Enoch, look at the book of the tablets of heaven, and read what is written upon them, and not every individual fact. And I looked at everything that was written, and I noted everything. And I read the book and everything that was written in it, all the deeds of men, and all the children of flesh who will be upon the earth for all the generations of eternity. And then I immediately blessed the Lord, the eternal King of glory, in that he has made all the works of the world, and I praised the Lord because of his patience, and I blessed him on account of the sons of Adam. And at that time I said, Blessed is the man who dies righteous and good, concerning whom no book of iniquity has been written, and against whom no guilt has been found. And these 3 holy ones brought me and set me on the earth in front of the door of my house, and said to me, Tell everything to your son Methuselah, and show all your children that no flesh is righteous before the Lord, for he created them. For 1 year we will leave you with your children, until you have regained your strength, so that you may teach your children and write these things down for them and testify to all your children. And in the 2nd year we will take you from amongst them. Let your heart be strong, for the good will proclaim righteousness to the good. The righteous will rejoice with the righteous, and they will wish each other well. But the sinner will die with the sinner, and the apostate will sink with the apostate. And those who practice righteousness will die because of the deeds of men, and will be gathered in because of the deeds of the impious. And in those days they finished speaking to me, and I went to my family as I blessed the Lord of ages. And now, my son Methuselah, all these things I recount to you and write down for you. I have revealed everything to you and have given you books about all these things. Keep, my son Methuselah, the books from the hand of your father, so that you may pass them on to the generations of eternity. I have given wisdom to you, and to your children, and to those who will be your children, that they may give it to their children, for all the generations forever, this wisdom that is beyond their thoughts. And those who understand it will not sleep, but will incline their ears that they may learn this wisdom, and it will be better for those who eat from it than good food. Blessed are all the righteous, blessed are all those who walk in the way of righteousness and do not sin like the sinners. In the numbering of all their days in which the sun journeys in heaven, coming in and out through the gates of heaven for 30 days. With the leaders of the thousands of this order of stars, and with the 4 which are added and divided between the 4 seasons of the year, which lead them and appear with them on 4 days. Because of them men go wrong, and they do not reckon them in the reckoning of the whole year. For men go wrong in respect of them, and do not know them exactly. For they belong in the reckoning of the year, and are truly recorded forever, 1 in the 1st gate, and 1 in the 3rd, and 1 in the 4th, and 1 in the 6th. And the year is completed in 364 days. And the account of it is true, and the recorded reckoning of it is exact, for the lights, and the months, and the feast, and the years, and the days. Uriel showed me and inspired me, he to whom the Lord of the whole created world gave commands about the host of heaven for me. And he has power in heaven, over night and day, to cause light to shine on men, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the powers of heaven which rotate in their orbits. And this is the law of the stars, which sit in their places at their times, at their feast, and in their months. And these are the names of those who lead them, who keep watch, so that they appear at their times, and in their orders, and in their months, and in their periods of rule, and in their positions. Their 4 leaders, who divide the 4 parts of the year, appear first, and after them the 12 leaders of the orders, who divide the months and the years into 364 days, with the heads over thousands who separate the days. And for the 4 days that are added to them, there are the leaders who separate the 4 parts of the year. And as for these heads over thousands, one is added between the leader and the led, but their leaders make the separation. And these are the names of the leaders who separate the 4 appointed parts of the year: Melchiel, Helamelech, Melial, and Narel. And the names of those whom they lead: Adnarel, Liasusael, Lilumiel. These 3 follow behind the leaders of the orders. And all others follow behind the 3 leaders of the orders, who follow behind those leaders of positions, who separate the 4 parts of the year. In the beginning of the year, Melchiel rises first and rules, who is called the southern sun, and all the days of his period during which he rules are 91. And these are the signs of the days that are to be seen on the earth in the days of his period of rule: sweat, and heat, and calm. And all the trees bear fruit, and leaves appear on all the trees, and the wheat harvest, and rose flowers. And all the flowers bloom in the field, but the trees of winter are withered. And these are the names of the leaders who are under them: Berkil, Zelabziel, and another one who is added, a head over 1,000, named Heloyasiph. and the days of the period of rule of this one are complete. The second leader after him is Helamelech, whom they call the shining sun, and all the days of his light are 91. And these are the signs of the days on earth, heat and drought, and the trees bring their fruit to ripeness and maturity and make their fruit dry, and the sheep mate and become pregnant, and men gather all the fruits of the earth and everything that is in the fields and the vats of wine. And these things occur in the days of his period of rule. And these are the names and the orders and the leaders of these heads over thousands: Gedaliah, Keel, and Heel. And the name of head over 1,000 who is added to them is Asphael. And the days of his period of rule are complete.
Stay flat.